Hey everyone, welcome to Frontline Faith, a weekly podcast where faith and culture meet. I'm your host, Pastor Ryan, a 20-year Army veteran, 2 decades of ministry experience. Thanks for listening. Like, share, subscribe, all the good stuff. You're listening to Frontline Faith. Welcome back to Frontline Faith. As always, I'm your host, Pastor Ryan, and today I've got a packed episode for you. We're going to take a step back in time and relive one of the most inspiring moments of World War II. The story of 4 chaplains and their incredible act of selflessness. Then we'll fast forward to today's modern health crisis, where we'll unpack some of the shocking truths about nutrition, life expectancy, and disease with insights from the Biggest Loser, or former Biggest Losers episode expert Jillian Michaels. Finally, we'll wrap up with some important news about Hurricane Milton and how you can get involved in relief efforts through Send Relief. Picture this. It's the dead of night, February 3rd, 1943. The North Atlantic is a cold, unforgiving expanse of dark water. Aboard the U.S. Army transport Dorchester, over 900 soldiers, seamen, and civilians are huddled together, most of them unaware that the danger of war is lurking beneath the waves. In the belly of the ship, 4 men, each from different religious backgrounds, are walking the corridors. Lieutenant George Fox, a Methodist minister, Rabbi Alexander Good, a Jewish rabbi, Father John Washington, a Catholic priest, and Reverend Clark Poling, a Dutch Reformed minister. They had come together through their shared mission as U.S. Army chaplains, men of faith whose purpose was to provide spiritual comfort to the soldiers on board. The war had taken many lives, and these chaplains understood the weight of what was at stake, though nothing could have prepared them for what was to come. Just after midnight, the unthinkable happens. A German U-boat launches a torpedo that rips into the side of the Dorchester. In an instant, the lights go out. Cold water rushes in. A chaos erupts. Hundreds of men scramble for lifeboats and life jackets, desperate to survive the sinking ship. Amid the panic, 4 chaplains stood in the gap, and they spring into action. They begin handing out life jackets, praying aloud, and guiding the terrified men toward the lifeboats. They don't ask about the soldiers' denominations or backgrounds. They just offer hope and calm in the midst of chaos. When the life jackets run out, each of the chaplains make a fateful decision. They remove their own life jackets and hand them to the next soldiers in line. One of the survivors, Private William Bednar, he later recounted, "I could hear men crying, pleading, praying. I could also hear the chaplains preaching courage. Their voices were the only thing that kept me going." As the ship continued to sink, the 4 chaplains were seen standing together on the deck, arm in arm, praying in unison. They prayed for the men around them, for peace in their final moments, and for courage. And then, the Dorchester went down. The 4 chaplains didn't survive that night, but their legacy did. Their act of selfless, transcended faith, race, and rank, showing a glimpse of what sacrificial love looks like in its purest form. In the years since, their story has been memorialized, and not just their bravery, because of their unwavering faith in a moment of profound fear. They lived out Christ's words from John 15:13. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. Their story reminds us of the call to live courageously, to look beyond our own comfort and security, and to serve others, even when it comes of great personal cost. The legacy of these 4 chaplains challenges us to consider how we might share the same love in our lives today. In the summer of 1995, yes, the late 1900s, I joined the U.S. Army through the Delayed Entry Program. I was still a junior in Bullitt Central High School in Shepherdsville, Kentucky. And then I graduated in 1996. I was set to begin my journey into military life. From the age of 5, 6, I wanted to be G.I. Joe, and I pursued nothing else other than that. So that summer, 1996, I left home and went to Fort Knox, Kentucky. It wasn't that far. It was actually a half an hour, 45 minutes from my house as growing up. I've been to Fort Knox through field trips and things of that nature. But I went there to basic training, and I trained as a 19 Delta Cavalry Scout. Now, a lot of folks, when they join the military, they join for a trade. They join and learn a skill that will help them in the civilian life. If you join as a tanker or a 19 Delta Scout, you got one job, and that's to look for the bad guy and take him out. And so I did this. This was an OSIT training program. It wasn't just an 8-week basic training. It was 4 months of basic training and Cavalry Scout skills, learning those things. My first assignment came after basic training, and I went to Fort Polk, Louisiana, and I was with the 1st Squadron, 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment. It's 1st of the 2nd ACR for short, a unit that has a storied history. The 2nd ACR, named the 2nd Dragoons, was initially formed in 1836 and served in numerous conflicts, including the Indian Wars, World War II, the Desert Storm. It's a proud cavalry unit with a legacy of scouting, reconnaissance, and combat service through America's history. Serving in this unit was an honor, as I became a part of its tradition of excellence. I still have a flag today in my basement, in my workout room, and I really enjoyed my time with the 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment. It's today now the 2nd Stryker unit. It's totally different. It's all infantry now, neither here nor there. But after completing my first enlistment in the fall of 1999, I shifted gears to pursue a college education at Eastern Kentucky University. It was there that I met my wife, Robin, at the Baptist Student Union, now the BCM, Baptist Collegiate Ministry. This was a turning point in my life. At the age of 12, I placed my faith and hope and trust in the person Jesus Christ. I went to summer camp with our church, and I felt God calling me, moving me, instilling in me this desire to serve in ministry. I didn't know what that looked like. And so I went back home. I went to school. I didn't really talk about this. And I pursued JROTC in high school. I pursued soccer in high school. I kind of put ministry-related things just in my heart and in kind of on the back burner. I didn't know what to do with it. As I left the Army, my first stint in the Army, I felt this draw again back to ministry. And I pursued anything and everything in college to fill an emptiness, a void, something to find satisfaction in. But unfortunately, I struggled academically. I spent more time asleep than I did in class. Did you know you can attend college and pay them money and sleep, and they're not going to care until about 3 semesters, and then they're going to say, hey, you might need to pursue something else, right? For me, God had other plans for me than completing my studies there at EKU. Shortly after Robin finished, we married, and ministry became the focus of my life. In 2003, I attended and graduated from Boyce College of the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, and launching into various church roles from 2003 to 2010. And in the fall of that year, I felt God's call renewed, but in a different path, military service, this time as an Army chaplain candidate. In January 2011, I attended the U.S. Army Chaplain School, ready to serve as a chaplain to soldiers. However, I soon realized that the master's degree that I was pursuing didn't meet the Army's required credit hours for chaplaincy. I faced another crossroad: either leave the Army Reserve or explore a new direction within the military. As a newly commissioned officer, I didn't want to leave the military. My life, a lot of it had been dedicated to pursuing a military career, military service. And so I began to do what any officer would do, and I called all the branches I could think of within the Army Reserve and kind of gave them my backstory and said, here's who I am, here's what I like to do, and I want to stay. What do you got? One branch said, hey, your chaplain school is kind of close to ours, and so you can be an adjutant general. In 2012, great movie, by the way, I transitioned into a new phase of my military career by becoming an adjutant general officer in the United States Army. An AG officer plays a critical role in personnel management, ensuring soldiers are well supported in terms of administration, human resources, and unit morale. It's a unique position because it focuses on helping units run smoothly and efficiently, from handling promotions to managing awards and keeping soldiers' records in order. Although I became an AG officer in 2012, I never truly filled that role until my deployment in 2019. My career prior to that was diverse, to say the least. I served as an observer controller trainer, a troop XO, and then as a commander in a 19 Delta Cavalry Scout drill sergeant and instructor unit. I was even set to take command of a 19 Delta OSIT unit, a full circle moment, if you will, back to where I'd started my Army journey. From there, I transitioned to commanding a headquarters and headquarters company in an aviation unit. During this time, I had the privilege of serving alongside one of the finest senior NCOs I have ever known, First Sergeant Stover. His leadership and expertise set a standard that I would never, forever, use to measure other senior NCOs. As we prepared for deployment at Fort Hood in 2019, the brigade commander reassigned me to a more forward unit. I ended up deploying to Iraq with soldiers I didn't know, those from the 5159th General Support Aviation Battalion. A GSAB, if you will, provides critical aviation support in combat, such as airlift, medevac evacuation, and aerial refueling. It's an essential component of any combat zone, ensuring the mobility and survival of soldiers on the ground. Deploying with 5159th GSAB, I experienced a wide array of challenges and triumphs from an aviation perspective. Traveling to multiple locations across Iraq, I even went into Syria, and the bond that I developed with these soldiers became one of the most unexpected and rewarding experiences of my military career. Reflecting on camaraderie, I can't help but think of the story of the 4 chaplains during World War II. These men from different religious backgrounds displayed the highest form of brotherhood and unity when they sacrificed their lives for others aboard the sinking SS Dorchester. Their courage and selflessness in the face of death highlight the unique bond that forms in military service, a bond that transcends differences, whether it's rank, faith, race, or even role in the military. The same sense of brotherhood was evident during my time with 5159 GSAB. Despite initially being unfamiliar with these soldiers, I quickly found that shared experiences, particularly in a combat zone, forge an unbreakable connection. Just like the 4 chaplains who supported and cared for each other and the men on that ship, I grew to love and respect the soldiers in my unit as we faced adversity together. This sense of camaraderie is one of the greatest gifts the Army offers. An indelible mark of selflessness, unity, and mutual reliance in the most challenging times. Now, from a tale of heroic sacrifice and the 4 chaplains to another battle that affects each one of us daily, the battle for our health. Now, this is not a paid promotion or anything like that, but for decades, we've been told to follow the food pyramid. Now, you can go on TikTok and social media and find all these debunked videos. Great, go for it. But I want to talk a little bit differently about this. See, this food pyramid, its base, the bottom, is loaded with grains, and its tip represents the fats, right, at the very top, and an emphasis on processed carbohydrates. But what if I told you that following the model may have actually done more harm than good? Jillian Michaels, a renowned fitness expert from The Biggest Loser, has long been critical of the food pyramid, and recent studies back up her concerns. Michaels once said the food pyramid wasn't designed to make you healthy. It was actually designed to sell products. And that truth runs deep. In fact, the food pyramid was created in the 1990s, but its roots were heavily influenced by agricultural interests, especially from industries producing grains, sugars, and processed foods. In recent years, studies have shown that high carbohydrate, low fat diets can actually lead to a number of health issues. The overemphasis on grains and processed carbs has been linked to the rising rates of obesity, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease. In the U.S. alone, approximately 34 million people, more than 10% of the population, have diabetes, with most cases being directly related to poor diet and lifestyle choices. And it's not just diabetes. Obesity, once a relatively rare condition, is now an epidemic, affecting more than 40% of American adults. Here's another startling fact. Despite advances in medical technology, life expectancy in the U.S. has actually declined in recent years. Chronic diseases, many of which are tied to poor nutrition, are a significant contributor. Heart disease, for example, remains the leading cause of death in the country, followed closely by cancer, both of which are heavily influenced by dietary factors. Jillian Michaels has repeatedly pointed out that our bodies were not designed to thrive on processed carbohydrates and sugars. Instead, we should be focusing on lean proteins, healthy fats, and a wide variety of vegetables. She advocates for what many nutritionists now call eating clean, minimizing processed foods and returning to whole, nutrient-dense options. Michaels has famously said, the closer your food is to its original state, the better it is for you. That means cutting back on refined sugars, processed grains, and artificial ingredients, and opting for real foods, foods that nourish rather than deplete. Michaels also emphasizes the power of healthy fats. Once demonized by the food pyramid, not all fats are created equal, she reminds us. Healthy fats from sources like avocados, nuts, and olive oil can actually improve heart health and help regulate metabolism, leading to better weight management and a lower risk of chronic disease. It's a call to rethink everything we've been told about diet and nutrition. By shifting to a more balanced, whole food-based approach, we can not only improve our daily well-being, but also increase our chances of living longer, even healthier lives. And as Christians, it's important to remember that this isn't just about vanity or appearance. It's about stewardship. Our bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit, and taking care of them is an act of worship and responsibility. Which leads me to a little bit deeper level. Now, we're going to start with some facts. right? Processed foods are everywhere. It's convenient, it's affordable, it's long-lasting, but it often comes at a cost. Highly processed foods tend to be packed with unhealthy fats, sugars, preservatives, artificial stuff, ingredients that we don't even know what they are. But are these dangers part of a grand conspiracy? Many conspiracy theories suggest that governments and corporations intentionally make us dependent on processed foods to profit from the resulting healthcare costs. While it's easy to get swept up in the narrative of hidden agendas, the reality is often a lot simpler than it seems. It's about profit margins and convenience. Companies create foods that are cheap to produce, easy to sell, and designed to keep consumers coming back for more. But even if there isn't a secret plan to keep us unhealthy, the impact on our bodies and our communities is real. So how should we respond? First, we must remember that our bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit. God calls us to honor Him in all aspects of life, including how we care for our health. That means being mindful of what we consume and seeking balance. It's not about paranoia or fear of a corporate scheme. It's about wisdom. Ask yourself, are the choices I'm making with my food benefiting my body, my mind, my spirit? Next time you're in the grocery store, consider what you're putting in your cart. Choose food that nourish your body and align with the values God has called us to live by. And now we shift gears or shift our attention to the unfolding crisis in Florida as Hurricane Milton begins to barrel towards the Gulf Coast of Florida. This Category 5 storm has changed to a Category 4 storm. It's expected to bring catastrophic storm surges, destructive winds, and widespread flooding. It is likely to be one of the most destructive hurricanes in U.S. history. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has declared a state of emergency in 51 counties, and millions of residents have evacuated as the storm intensifies. Experts are warning that Florida's West Coast beaches could face near total devastation, with 95% of the coastline expected to be underwater and erosion impacting 100% of the region. The National Weather Service has issued grim warnings about the damage to homes and infrastructure, stating that some areas could be uninhabitable for weeks, months, if not a year after the storm passes. But in response to this disaster and the disaster that North Carolina from Hurricane Helene and other places that are trying to get back on their feet, there's a Southern Baptist initiative called Send Relief. It's already staging recovery resources in Milton impact areas, but also it's been doing a lot of good work in North Carolina and other areas, and they're ready to deploy once this storm clears. If you feel called to help, Send Relief is accepting monetary donations to provide emergency supplies, food, and shelter for displaced families. Your contributions can make a big difference in these critical moments as communities brace for impact and prepare for a long recovery. Let's keep the people of Florida in our prayers and do what we can to support the ongoing relief efforts. If Send Relief is something you'd like to be a part of, I'm going to leave a link in the description of this podcast, and you're more than welcome to follow that. That wraps up today's episode of Frontline Faith. Remember, whether you're inspired by the bravery of the 4 chaplains or looking to improve your health and well-being, faith is always the foundation on which we can build a stronger future. And as we witness the unfolding tragedy in Florida, let's also act in faith by extending help and a helping hand to those in need. As always, you're listening to Frontline Faith. Stay safe, live Coram Deo, and we'll see you next time.